Let me break this down in a way you need to hear it, because this first truth is the one that changes everything if you really understand it. Silence creates space for realization, and most people underestimate how powerful that space really is. When you stop contacting him, when you stop checking in, explaining yourself, asking questions, or trying to keep a connection alive, you're not disappearing. You're removing the noise. And when the noise goes away, the mind finally has room to work. A man does not process his emotions in the middle of constant communication. He processes them in quiet moments, in gaps, in the absence of distraction. That's when realization begins. When you were present all the time, your value was wrapped in routine. He got used to hearing from you, used to your attention, used to your availability, not because he didn't care, but because human nature adapts. Comfort can blur appreciation. That doesn't mean you weren't important. It means you became familiar. And familiarity, when unchecked, makes people forget what life feels like without you. The moment you step back, that familiarity breaks. Suddenly, something feels off. The rhythm of his day changes. There's no message where there used to be one. No voice where there was comfort. That disruption forces the mind to ask questions. At first, he may not even label it as missing you. Men don't always go straight to emotion. It starts as irritation, confusion, restlessness. He checks his phone without realizing why. He notices small triggers, a song, a place, a moment that remind him of you. That's not coincidence. That's his mind filling the space you left behind. Silence doesn't erase memory, it amplifies it. The quieter it gets, the louder the thoughts become. This is where realization deepens, because now he's not reacting to you, he's reacting to himself. When you were contacting him, his responses were shaped by habit or convenience. But when you're gone, he has to confront how he actually feels. He starts replaying moments, not the dramatic ones, but the subtle ones. How you listened without judging. How you understood him when he didn't even understand himself. How life felt easier when you were around. These realizations don't come from pressure. They come from absence. Silence also removes your influence from the equation. And that's important, because as long as you're present, he can tell himself that the connection is still there, still accessible, still optional. But when you're no longer reaching out, that option feels threatened. Not in a manipulative way, in a real human way. The brain registers loss before the heart names it. That's when realization begins to take root. He starts asking himself whether walking away was the right choice, whether he took something for granted, whether he misunderstood your value. Another thing silence does is expose truth. When there's no communication, there's nothing to distract him from his own patterns. He sees how he handled the situation. He remembers what you asked for and what he ignored. He remembers the moments you were patient and the moments he was careless. Silence becomes a mirror, and mirrors are uncomfortable, but they're honest. This is why realization doesn't always come with peace. Sometimes it comes with regret, sometimes with guilt. Sometimes with a quiet understanding that something meaningful was mishandled. And here's the part most people miss. Silence doesn't rush realization. It allows it to mature. Feelings that are forced fade quickly. Feelings that are discovered grow roots. When you step back, you're not trying to convince him of your worth. You're letting him discover it on his own. That discovery hits deeper because it feels earned, not imposed. A man trusts what he comes to on his own far more than what he's told repeatedly. Silence also shifts power not over him, but within you. When you stop contacting him, you're no longer waiting on responses or validation. You reclaim your emotional center, and that shift is felt, even at a distance. People sense when someone has detached from needing them. That independence adds weight to your absence. He doesn't just feel that you're gone, he feels that you're moving forward. And that realization stirs something deeper than simple nostalgia. It challenges his sense of importance in your life. As time passes, the realization sharpens. He starts to notice that no one else quite brings what you brought. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. And real is rare. Silence gives him time to compare, not just people, but experiences. He realizes that connection isn't easy to replace. That peace isn't automatic. That consistency isn't guaranteed. These thoughts don't explode all at once. They build quietly, day by day, in the space you left open. This is why silence is not passive. It's active restraint. It's choosing not to interrupt the process that can only happen when you're not there. It's understanding that some realizations cannot be talked into existence. They have to be felt. And the absence of contact is what allows those feelings to surface without resistance. So when you wonder if he's thinking about you, understand this. If there is space, there is thought. If there is silence, there is reflection. And if there is reflection, realization is already emotion. You don't need to say a word for that to happen. Let me tell you something that a lot of people misunderstand about men, and it causes so many women unnecessary pain. Men don't miss pressure. They don't miss arguments, demands, repeated conversations, or feeling like they're constantly being evaluated. What men miss deeply, quietly, and sometimes too late is peace. And when you stop contacting him, the first thing he notices isn't the silence itself. It's the absence of peace or the sudden realization of how much peace you actually brought into his life. See, a man's world is already heavy. He's dealing with expectations, responsibilities, stress, ego, and the pressure to perform in every area of life. Whether he talks about it or not, that weight is always there. When he's with a woman who adds pressure, constant questioning, emotional tug of war, needing reassurance every moment, his nervous system stays on edge. Even if he cares about her, his mind associates the connection with tension. But when a woman brings peace, something different happens. His guard drops. His shoulders relax. He feels safe enough to be himself. While you were in his life, your peace may have gone unnoticed because peace doesn't announce itself. Chaos is loud. Drama is memorable. Peace is subtle. It shows up in how calm he felt after talking to you, how supported he felt without being controlled, how understood he felt without being interrogated. Men don't always recognize that in the moment. They feel it, but they don't label it. It becomes part of the background. And like anything consistent, it can be taken for granted. When you step back and stop contacting him, the pressure disappears along with you, but so does the peace. And that's when the difference becomes clear. He starts noticing that conversations with others feel heavier, that interactions feel transactional or draining, that he has to explain himself more, that he doesn't feel as emotionally settled as he used to. Peace is only fully appreciated once it's gone. That's when missing begins, not missing noise, but missing relief. Men don't sit around saying, I miss how she supported me emotionally. That's not how it shows up. It shows up as restlessness, as irritation, as feeling overwhelmed by small things, as longing for a sense of calm they can't quite name. And because you're no longer there, his mind naturally traces that calm back to you. He remembers how talking to you made things feel lighter, how your presence softened his edges instead of sharpening them. Pressure pushes men away because it feels like judgment. Peace pulls men back because it feels like home. And when you removed yourself, you remove the chance for pressure to continue, but you also remove the place where he could exhale. That contrast hits him slowly but deeply. He may not admit it right away. He may distract himself. He may tell himself he's fine. But peace leaves a vacuum when it's gone. Another truth people don't talk about is this. Men bond through relief. When a woman becomes a source of calm in a man's life, she becomes emotionally significant in a way that's hard to replace. Anyone can be exciting. Anyone can be attractive. Anyone can be fun for a moment. But very few people make life feel easier. When you were that person, your absence doesn't just change his emotions, it changes his daily experience. Silence allows him to separate pressure from peace. When you're not contacting him, there's no emotional demand coming from you, no expectation, no pulling. And ironically, that lack of pressure is what makes him reflect. He starts to realize that The peace he lost wasn't because you were demanding it, was because he didn't protect what mattered. He begins to understand that your calm wasn't weakness. It was strength. And your patience wasn't something that would last forever. Men don't respond well to emotional force, but they respond strongly to emotional contrast. When you're gone, he compares how he feels now to how he felt then. And if your presence was peaceful, that comparison works in your favor every time. He realizes that peace is rare, and rare things aren't easily replaced. That realization doesn't happen overnight. It builds through moments of frustration, exhaustion, and emotional noise from elsewhere. This is why trying to remind a man of your value through constant communication often backfires. It keeps the pressure alive. It keeps him focused on managing emotions instead of missing them. But when you step back, when you allow distance to exist, you give him the space to feel what life is like without your calming influence. And once he feels that, it stays with him. Peace is not dramatic, but it's unforgettable. It's the way someone made you feel safe enough to rest. When that's gone, the body remembers before the mind does. He may not text you immediately. He may not say anything at all. But internally, he's registering the loss. And that loss reshapes how he sees you. So if you were a woman who brought peace instead of chaos, calm instead of confusion, understanding instead of constant conflict, your absence speaks louder than any message ever could. Because men don't chase pressure, but they do miss peace. And once a man realizes that the peace he lost was you, that truth doesn't fade. Let me tell you something that happens in a man's mind when you disappear and stop contacting him, something most people don't see because it's quiet and internal. When you're no longer present, no longer available, no longer checking in, his mind naturally begins to compare. Not because he's trying to hurt you or replace you, but because comparison is how the brain makes sense of loss. And this comparison is where your real value finally becomes clear to him. When you were in his life, you were the standard. Even if he didn't realize it, the way you spoke to him, the way you reacted, the way you showed care or gave space when needed, those things became his emotional baseline. But as long as you were there, he didn't have to measure it against anything else. It was just normal. When you leave, that normal disappears. And the very next interactions he has with other people highlight the difference. At first, he might think he's fine. He might distract himself, socialize more, talk to other women, keep busy. But comparison doesn't happen on the surface. It happens in moments, in conversations that feel shallow, in laughter that doesn't linger, in support that feels conditional. He notices that something is missing, even if he can't name it. And slowly his mind begins to trace the missing feeling back to you. Men don't compare based on words. They compare based on how they feel afterward. He remembers that when he talked to you, he felt understood instead of misunderstood, calm instead of defensive, accepted instead of evaluated. When he interacts with others and doesn't feel that same ease, your absence becomes noticeable. This is not about jealousy or drama. It's about emotional contrast. And contrast sharpens memory. What makes this powerful is that the comparison is unintentional. You're not reminding him of your value. You're not explaining what you brought to the table. He's discovering it himself. Every time a conversation goes nowhere, every time he feels drained instead of energized, every time he realizes he can't open up the same way, your presence grows larger in his mind, not because you're pushing, but because you're missing. Comparison also strips away illusion. When you were there, he may have believed he had endless options, endless chances, endless time. But when he actually experiences life without you, the fantasy meets reality. He realizes that not everyone listens the way you did. Not everyone shows patience the way you did. Not everyone cared without keeping score. And suddenly what he once saw as replaceable feels rare. This is where regret often begins, not dramatic regret, but quiet questioning. He starts wondering if he misjudged you, if he undervalued what he had, if he assumed you would always be there. Comparison forces him to reevaluate his decisions because the alternatives don't measure up the way he expected them to. And that realization doesn't come from you reaching out. It comes from you staying gone. Men also compare emotional effort. When he sees how much work it takes to build even a fraction of the connection he had with you, he realizes how effortless things felt before. He remembers how you understood his moods, how you didn't require him to perform, how you made space for him to be human. Those memories don't hit all at once. They surface during disappointment, during frustration, during emotional fatigue. The absence of contact gives his mind uninterrupted space to run these comparisons. There's no new information from you to soften the contrast. No reassurance. No emotional maintenance. Just reality. And reality has a way of exposing truth. The more he compares, the clearer it becomes that what he lost wasn't ordinary. It was specific. It was you. Comparison also changes desire. At first, attraction might have been physical or situational, but now, desire becomes emotional. He doesn't just think about how you looked, he thinks about how you made him feel. And emotional desire is stronger, deeper, and harder to ignore. When he realizes that no one else triggers the same emotional response, your absence becomes meaningful instead of temporary. This is why trying